I'm going to show you how to set up your Vim motions in VS Code so you can start programming like a pro. Yo, what's up? I'm Melky and I'm a software engineer at Twitch. And today I'm going to bring you a bit of a spicy video on how to set up your configuration and your key bindings in VS Code to allow you to start using Vim motions like an absolute 10x engineer. So I recently made a video about how I'm moving away from NeoVim to VS Code. Again, I'm sorry Prime, I'm sorry Teej. If you haven't watched the video, go check it out. And I got a lot of questions about, well, Melky, what are your bindings? What are your Vim motions? Can we have them please? We need them. Here, I'm gonna show you everything you need to know to set up your VS Code to give you that smooth, crispy Vim feeling. So I'm going to start off by acknowledging that there is a bit of a struggle using VS Code with Vim. It feels a bit clunky, you know, using the file tree or terminals, even just switching between windows. It's not all that intuitive. So I decided to research and dig down into the settings of VS Code to create a configuration that give you the best Vim motion experience. Before we go any further, there's two things I want you to do. The first one is obviously get the Vim extension by VSCode Vim. It's mandatory. This is what allows us to have the Vim extensions that we use and plugins necessary for our key mappings and all of that. And the second thing I want you to do is actually edit up and clean up our UI here. You see, VS Code comes with all this stuff that you don't really need, and it's just too much for me. So what I do is I go to View, Appearance, and I toggle off the status bar, I toggle off the activity bar, make sure I toggle off the minimap, nobody uses that, toggle off the breadcrumbs, and there you go. Now you have a much more cleaner editor to use and have fun with. I discovered to get the best experience, you have to modify two files. One is your settings.json and the other one is your key bindings.json. So let's just get started. Right now, the bare minimum what I have is line numbers relative. I think it's just easier to jump between numbers when they're relative from where your current position is. It just makes more sense for me. You don't have to do this. And for my Vim leader key, I use space. Pretty simple, pretty generic, pretty popular leader key to have in Vim motions. So the very first key mappings I'm going to talk about is within navigation, and that's just switching between your open buffers. That's just Shift L and Shift H. You can see here I'm jumping between the tabs. This is just standard, super easy. And the other one that I really like, and this comes with the Vim extension, is leader V to open up a vertical pane, or I can be in the pane and do leader S to open up a horizontal pane. Now this again is standard Vim motion, but in VS Code, you'd be surprised how not obvious it is to create these. So I hope these help you out. It just makes jumping between files super easy. And as I just alluded to, you can have here, I have my classic leader H, leader J, leader K, and leader L to jump between all the different windows I have open. Now within VS Code, there is a feature we want to take advantage of, and that is the built-in terminal. Now you can see here, I have some keys set here for the built-in terminal. Shift J to toggle a window of the terminal itself, and you can do Shift N to open up a brand new one, and then I have Shift A and Shift B to toggle between all my open terminals. Now this is super easy and super handy when you're running something with a server and a separate React client, or if you have something going you want to deploy to GitHub or install packages. It's super critical to be able to quickly navigate to your terminal, jump between all the open instances, and use them how you want. Navigating is pretty straightforward, but it brings us into our very first gotcha, and that's actually file tree. You see, in VS Code, the file tree is known as the Explorer, and VS Code does something a little strange. VS Code likes to separate its key mappings based on the command ID, and all the key command IDs under Explorer are not the regular ones that fall under like editing a file or navigating between files. And so what this means is when you're in the Explorer, your key mappings actually don't map over, meaning everything you have in your Vim settings, they don't work in the file tree, which is why we need to rely on key bindings.json to overwrite some of the existing key bindings we have to allow us to navigate and use the file tree efficiently and like we want to. So you can see here, the only key I have in my settings.json file is leader NE, and that actually opens up the file tree for me. Now in the key bindings.json, I have a few commands that allow me to create a new file, create a new folder, delete the file, and bounce back out of the file tree. So for example, in components, I have this forms folder here. If I want to add a new file, I can do Control N. I can put new file.tsx. That bounces me to a brand new file here. I can go back and let's say instead of a new file, I want to do a new folder. I can do Control Shift N, and that allows me to new file, and that's a new directory. Nothing in it, but again, Control N, new file.tsx. And now we have a bunch of new files. And now to delete them, we can just do Control Shift D. That deletes a file. Control Shift D to delete the folder. And again, Control Shift D to delete that last file that we created. And now this brings us to the nice to have section of my binding. So I don't have too many bindings. I keep it pretty simple for the most part, but I do have a few things that make editing so much easier for me. For example, leader W allows me to save a file. That's pretty standard. Another one that I have that I can't really live without is leader F. This allows me to look at and navigate through different files in my project. Again, super critical for faster navigation and that mouseless Vim motion that we're looking for. Another critical one that I have is, I can highlight a block of code. I can do leader C. This allows me to completely comment the code if I want. I can undo that. I can go back up and I can just move and indent this code if I want to. Stuff like that. I can do multiple indents. I can do, this is just standard stuff that comes kind of pre-baked into Vim, but it's necessary to kind of create and bind to your VS Code to get you that smooth experience that we expect. Well, that's it. There you have it. Those are my settings for VS Code to kind of have the best Vim experience that I could possibly get to. I like to keep everything very simple. I just like to use the generic Vim motions and everything built in. I do a few things that may just be for me, like the leader key and creating the terminals, but I will leave a link in the description for both of these files for you to take in, use as a starting plate, or even modify to see how you want to use them. That's one of the beauties of Vim, and I'm curious to see what you guys will do with them. If you have an existing file right now with your configuration, drop a link. Let me know. Maybe there's something I missed and I need for my workflow to make myself even more efficient and to grow and learn new things about Vim. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, I got two things I leave you with. The first one is, who cares? Use the editor that you want. If you don't want to use Vim motions, well, I mean, yeah, you probably shouldn't use Vim motions, but use VS Code, use NeoVim, don't use Sublime. I'm joking, use Sublime. Don't use Atom though, there I'm serious. And the last thing, as always, you gotta pow it.